Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Mark with My Front Range Living, and today we're talking about the best places to live in Colorado, and we're going to get started right now. Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Mark with My Front Range Living, powered by RE/MAX Integrity. I'm a full-time real estate agent here in Colorado, and today we're talking about the best places to live in Colorado. So, if you're thinking about moving to Colorado, or maybe you're already living in Colorado, and you're like, what are some other options I might have? This is a great video for you. Before we get too far into it, Amber and I wanted to let you know that we are going to have a relocation guide download for you available, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But for right now, let's just jump right into some of the best places to live in Colorado. So we're going to hop right into it. Let's start with Colorado Springs because that is where we are located. So something about Colorado Springs. First and foremost, we are growing like crazy here in Colorado Springs. Our population growth has seen a substantial spike over the last several years, and it's even more so this year with the pandemic, simply because people have realized they are able to work remotely, and most of their employers are saying, this is a full-time thing now. You can work remotely wherever you are. That's fine. And so people are choosing lifestyle. And talk about lifestyle, we've got it. Hiking, biking, mild weather, skiing, kayaking. We are an outdoorsy community. Absolutely 100%. Because of our weather here, it's just mild the majority of the time. So getting outdoors and being in those activities is super, super easy. So we've seen a lot of growth. With that comes job opportunities. Amazon is building several new facilities down by the airport right now, and there's a lot of businesses coming to town. Tech is a big thing, especially for those retired military. This is a great landing spot because it offers some jobs that you can't otherwise see. What's interesting, though, is as much growth as we've seen compared to some of the other cities that we're going to talk about today, we have a small town vibe. And by that, I mean a lot of small businesses. We are very much a community here in Colorado Springs. Super tight-knit, even though the military is a giant part of our presence. Now, while the military is a huge part of our presence, we're still pretty tight-knit, even though they come and go. The reason that the military plays such a huge part of our lives here in Colorado Springs, Schriever Air Force Base, Peterson, Fort Carson, the Air Force Academy, Cheyenne Mountain NORAD, we have a lot of military installations here. So that's a huge part of our population. And we look at everything military related a lot different than some other places. And I can say that having grown up in the Midwest, when we got here 17 years ago, we just look at the military very, very differently here in the Springs than we do just about anywhere else. So let's talk about that awesome growth. What does that mean? Traffic. As I said, I'm a small Midwestern kid, so I've been stuck behind combines and all sorts of other farm implements throughout my career, but traffic, I think, is pretty bad. Now, I have it on good authority from friends that have moved here from Washington, D.C., or some of the larger cities in the country, and they're like, this traffic is not bad at all. That's fine. Just subjectively, be prepared for what I consider to be congestion unless you're coming from an LA or a Washington, D.C. or something like that. Apparently, traffic's not that bad. So, cost of living in Colorado Springs. Compared to the other cities that we're going to talk about, it's very, very low. Certainly on the rise. I don't want to mislead you. We're on the rise. Our property values continue to grow every single month. But compared to the other cities that we're going to talk about that you can move to in Colorado, we're pretty low. Our taxes are as well. Our tax rates seem to be lower than Denver, Fort Collins, and Boulder, and some of the other cities here in Colorado. So that's a big draw as well. In fact, we're seeing El Paso County, where Colorado Springs is located, grow on the north end because people are willing to commute from North El Paso County into Denver for work if they are still working in brick and mortar. Speaking of Denver, let's head 50 miles to the north and talk about them. All right, so we have gone 50 miles north of Colorado Springs. We are in Denver, Colorado. Oh, man. Denver. So Denver is a great, great, great city. Lots of different reasons that we love Denver, not the least of which is the job opportunities. Again, that whole lifestyle conversation that we were having in Colorado Springs travels up with us to Denver. It's pretty mild compared to several of the larger cities that are in the nation. And so a lot of employers are coming to Denver. Another great part about Denver is the downtown scene. I think Denver has one of the coolest downtown vibes that I've been a part of. It's pretty awesome. As a matter of fact, we talk about some of the sports venues in Denver, and they are in the downtown area. Talk about the Pepsi Center and Mile High and Coors Field. So a lot of the major sports teams are downtown Denver. Speaking of venues, not only do we have those venues that I just listed for sporting opportunities, but music venues. Oh man, the music venues that we have access to in Denver are unstoppable, which is fantastic. We get a lot of cool artists that come through. And so Red Rocks, if you haven't been to Red Rocks, get to Red Rocks. Even if you were to ask artists that play, that's definitely on their bucket list. It's just a cool outdoor amphitheater. You need to get there. Pepsi Center is a huge attraction. The Fillmore is a big attraction. And you have the opportunity to see a lot of different shows because Denver has such a great scene in that capacity. So Buckley Air Force Base. Now, it definitely not as much of a military presence in Denver as we have in Colorado Springs, but Buckley Air Force Base is up there. And so there's a smaller military presence, but definitely if you get PCS'd, Denver's still a great opportunity. So Buckley Air Force Base is awesome. Now, traffic. We talked about traffic in Colorado Springs. There's no subjectivity to this. Traffic is way worse in Denver than it is in Colorado Springs. And that's just because of just the sheer volume of people. The population has grown over the last several decades, as you can imagine. And that just leads to more cars, more people on the freeways, and it's crowded. It gets really, really crowded, specifically on a Friday afternoon. I will walk to Denver before I drive there on a Friday afternoon. So cost of living in Denver, what does it look like? Obviously a little bit more than it is in Colorado Springs, but less than one of the other cities we're going to talk about here shortly. So it could be a great landing spot. So one of the reasons that the cost of living is less and it varies is the sheer amount of suburbs that are in Denver. Denver itself is only so big. Then you get on the outside of Denver and you get all the suburbs that come with it. Pretty substantial cost of living differences all over the place when you get into the suburbs. So that's pretty cool. Taxes a little bit higher in Douglas and Denver County than they are in El Paso County, but not quite as much as they are when we get up into the other cities that we're going to talk about. So when we talk about the suburbs, one thing that I love about Denver is you have this metropolitan city, right? But there are still a ton of trails, a lot of fantastic parks, and just outdoor opportunities. Again, taking advantage of that mild weather, Denver has got great trails. What's interesting about Denver's trails is they're normally paved. So biking and hiking, you can do either one, and they're all interconnected with a lot of the parks that are in the surrounding area. So we're going to talk about this theme as well throughout all of these. And I didn't really mention it with Colorado Springs, but definitely still part of that scene down there. In Denver, the craft beer scene is crazy. We are a giant craft beer state. We're going to talk more about that in the next two cities as well. But craft beer is a giant part of the Denver scene as well as Colorado Springs. The biggest trump hand that Denver has over Colorado Springs is its proximity to DIA, Denver International Airport. You can get anywhere in the world from DIA. Not so much the case in Colorado Springs. So Denver has DIA. So if you need to get anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, DIA being convenient is a huge positive for you in moving to Denver. Now, we've looked at Denver. We've looked at Colorado Springs. Let's go even farther north to Fort Collins and take a look up there. All right, so we have talked about Colorado Springs. We've talked about Denver. Let's make our way north. We are in Fort Collins. So Fort Collins, man, what can you say about Fort Collins? It's awesome. We love heading off to Fort Collins. It's got a great downtown vibe. It is a lot of fun to hang out in the downtown area, kind of an open air area where you can walk around shops, restaurants, bars, things like that. It's just a really cool, chill vibe in the downtown Fort Collins area. Another big draw to Fort Collins is if you don't want to be in the downtown area, plenty of outdoor stuff to do. A ton of trails, hiking, biking, and we'll get to Horsetooth Reservoir. You can even go kayaking and stand-up paddleboarding. So on top of all the outdoor stuff, on top of the downtown scene, Colorado State University is nestled right there in the middle of Fort Collins. That's right, Fort Collins is a college town. CSU is right there in the thick of it all, which could be part of the overall chill vibe that the city has. It could also be why there are over 30 craft breweries in the city, not the least of which are two giant pioneers of the craft community movement, and that is New Belgium and Odell. Now, obviously, those two have grown, and they're a little bit above what I would consider to be craft anymore, but still great pioneers in the small craft brewery community. So we talked about it earlier, Horsetooth Reservoir. So what's unique about Horsetooth Reservoir is the fact that we don't have a lot of water in Colorado. So this giant body of water being right next to a city is a huge draw. Like I said, kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, you want to do some fishing, you can absolutely do it. And if you don't want to do those things, you don't want to get into the water, still some great trail systems around the reservoir, which is a nice draw. So as we go north from Colorado Springs to Denver to Fort Collins, now we're going to make our way just a little bit south and west of Fort Collins to Boulder, Colorado. Yes, south and west of Fort Collins is where Boulder is nestled, just to the north and west of Denver in the foothills of the Front Range. So being nestled in the foothills of the Front Range makes for an absolutely gorgeous backdrop. One of the huge draws for Boulder, Colorado is just how beautiful it is. The natural beauty of the surroundings of the city are just really, really tough to beat. Another great draw to Boulder is, of course, Colorado University. CU is up there in Boulder, and that's a great provider for employment up there. So a lot of job opportunities in Boulder, and that has a lot to do with Colorado University. The other one that has a lot to do with the job opportunities in Boulder is Google. That's right. Google has opened up a building there in Boulder, Colorado, and that's a big, big draw. So giant tech community, really forward thinking in regards to the college and the tech industry. So with all of these great amenities in Boulder, you can imagine comes a heftier price tag. Boulder has a tendency to be one of the higher priced areas, specifically of the four cities that we have talked about to this point. Colorado, Denver, Fort Collins, all are going to be less expensive than Boulder. Boulder's housing market is really on fire, but it's really, really pricey. So be prepared to pay more for a home in the Boulder area than you would these other three cities. So another thing that you might see as you begin to research Boulder, Colorado, on a lot of message boards, on a lot of blogs, things like that, if you are an introvert, Boulder could be a great choice for you because unless you're part of a group, unless you're part of an employment group or a college group or any sort of group, it can be kind of standoffish. And what we mean by that is it takes a lot more time to build the relationships in Boulder than it does elsewhere. So if you're an introvert, that's fantastic. But if you are outgoing, like, I don't know, say this guy, it might take you a little bit longer to build those relationships in Boulder than it would somewhere else. So we have talked about Colorado Springs, we've talked about Denver, we talked about Fort Collins, we talked about Boulder, but as you can imagine, those are not the only draws to Colorado. There are a ton of outlying cities out there, and we're going to talk about those right now. So we're talking about the outlying cities. What do we mean about outlying cities? To this point, those four major metro areas are along the Front Range. They're on the east side of the Rocky Mountain Range. Now, some people want to be right in the middle of the range, and some of those options are Gunnison, Montrose, and on the far west side of Colorado, Grand Junction. Those have been some great landing spots for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons, but people seem to really, really like Gunnison, Montrose, and Grand Junction as opportunities when moving to Colorado as well. And then again, we also have those people who are looking for vacation rentals, or they're just in the market for the higher end real estate, and that is the ski resort towns. Vail, Aspen, Breckenridge, Glenwood Springs, those are far, far pricier than where we're talking about, but they're also not necessarily primary residence type towns. Those are going to be where people just kind of go and relax and enjoy a home on a temporary basis. But Vail, Aspen, and Breck, absolutely gorgeous towns. So even if you don't move to Colorado, go visit them. You won't be sorry. Hey, we talked earlier in the video, Amber and I have a relocation guide download we would like to offer you that is in there's a link for that in the description of the video below. Click on that, feel free, that is yours, you can have that. If you have any questions, we're happy to help, but that's just yours. As always, it would mean the world to us if you gave us a thumbs up on the video. It would mean even more if you went down to the bell below and subscribed to our channel. We are putting out content every single Monday to help you make Colorado feel like home. Once again, I am Mark Hubert with My Front Range Living, powered by RE/MAX Integrity. Thanks for stopping by. We really appreciate it. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.